Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa Padurika Charja Ashtotar the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa Padurika Charja Ashtotar the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All right. Forgive me for this detour. But my memory isn't what it used to be. So since I'm remembering it now, strike while the iron is hot. I've been carrying this around for a week. Zachary, you forgot. Tell your grandmother, whoever it was, says, I got it, you got it. Narayam namaskritya, narang chaiva narottamam, devim saraswatim vyasam, tato jayamadiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 16th day of January 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, Chapter 9, Dhruva Maharaj returns home. Text number 5. Savaita daiva pratipaditam giram Daiving parigyata paratma nirnayah Tam bhakti bhavo bhyagunada satvaram Padishrutoru shavasam duvakchitihi Savaita daiva pratipaditam giram Daiving parigyata paratma nirnayah Tam bhakti bhavo bhyagunada satvaram Padishrutoru shavasam duvakchitihi Savaita daiva pratipaditam giram Daivim padigyata paratma nirnayah Tam bhakti bhavo bhyagunada satvaram Padishrutoru shavasam duvakchitihi Tam giram Daiving padigyata paratma nirnayah Parishatoru shavasam dhruvachitihi Savaita daiva pratipaditam giram Daivim padigyata paratma nirnayah Tam bhakti bhavo bhyagunada satvaram Parishrutoru shavasam duvachitihi Savaita daiva pratipaditam giram Daivim parigyata paratma nirnayah Tam bhakti bhavo bhyagunada satvaram Parishrutoru shavasam duvachitihi Savaita daiva pratipaditam giram Daivim parigyata paratma nirnayah Tam bhakti bhavo bhyagunada satvaram Parishrutoru shavasam duvachitihi Saha Dhruva Maharaj. Why? Certainly. Tada, at that time. Eva, just. Pratipaditam, having attained. Giram, speech. Daivim, transcendental. Parigyata, understood. Paratma, of the Supreme Soul. Nirnayaha, the conclusion. Tam, to the Lord. Bhakti bhavaha, situated in devotional service. Abhyagranat, offered prayers. Asatvaram, without any hasty conclusion. Parishruta, widely known. Uru Shavasam, whose fame. Dhruvachitihi, Dhruva, whose planet would not be annihilated. Translation. At that time, Dhruva Maharaj became perfectly aware of the Vedic conclusion and understood the absolute truth and his relationship with all living entities. In accordance with the line of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, whose fame is widespread, Dhruva, who in the future would receive a planet which would never be annihilated, even during the time of dissolution, offered his deliberate and conclusive prayers. Purport. There are many important items to be considered in this verse. First of all, the relationship between the absolute truth and the relative material and spiritual energies is here understood by a student who has complete knowledge of the Vedic literature. Dhruva Maharaj never went to any school or academic teacher to learn the Vedic conclusion, but because of his devotional service to the Lord, as soon as the Lord appeared and touched his forehead with his conch shell, automatically the entire Vedic conclusion was revealed to him. That is the process of understanding Vedic literature. One cannot understand it simply by academic learning. The Vedas indicate that only to one who has unflinching faith in the spiritual master, in the Supreme Lord as well as in the spiritual master, is the Vedic conclusion revealed. I'll read that again. Only to one who has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord as well as the spiritual master is the Vedic conclusion revealed. The example of Dhruva Maharaj is that he engaged himself in devotional service to the Lord according to the order of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. As a result of Dhruva's rendering such devotional service with great determination and austerity, the personality of Godhead personally manifested himself before him. Dhruva was only a child. He wanted to offer nice prayers to the Lord, but because he lacked sufficient knowledge, he hesitated. But by the mercy of the Lord, as soon as the Lord's conch shell touched his forehead, as soon as the Lord's conch shell touched his forehead, Dhruva became completely aware of the Vedic conclusion. That conclusion is based on proper understanding of the difference between Jiva and Paramatma, the individual soul and the Supersoul. The individual soul is forever a servant of the Supersoul, and therefore his relationship with the Supersoul is to offer service. That is called Bhakti Yoga or Bhakti Bhava. Dhruva Maharaj offered his prayers to the Lord not in the way of the impersonalist philosophers, but as a devotee. Therefore it is clearly said here, Bhakti Bhava. The only prayers worth offering are those offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose reputation is spread far and wide. Dhruva Maharaj wanted to have the kingdom of his father, but his father refused even to allow him to get on his lap. In order to fulfill his desire, the Lord had already created a planet known as the pole star, or Dhruva Loka, which was never to be annihilated even at the time of the dissolution of the universe. Dhruva Maharaj attained this perfection not by acting hastily, but by patiently executing the order of his spiritual master. And therefore he became so successful that he saw the Lord face to face. Now he was further enabled by the causeless mercy of the Lord to offer fitting prayers to the Lord. To glorify or offer prayers unto the Supreme, one needs the Lord's mercy. One cannot write to glorify the Lord unless one is endowed with his causeless mercy. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Milatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is the same thing that happened with Prahlad. If you recall, if you're familiar, I think we've been through the 7th canto already, and all the way around and back. That Prahlad, also being a 5-year-old boy, but being a pure devotee and very dear to Lord Nrsingadev, when he stood up to offer prayers, he felt, how can I offer prayers? I'm only 5 years old. I haven't taken Sanskrit enough. So he got touched, in this case, by the hand of Lord Nrsingadev, and he was able to offer all these prayers. So this is a theme. If you recall, back in 2nd canto, we read how the Vedas were originally manifest in the heart of Brahma. He was initiated that way, and he became, but first he heard these 2 syllables, ta-pa, ta-pa. I think it was twice. And from that, he was so intelligent, he said, oh, okay, that means I should perform austerity, and meditated for a long time. And then he had this revelation. He had Krishna revealed everything in the heart, he even revealed his whole world and everything. And then he spoke the Brahma Samhita. He was enlightened in that way and was able to speak. So this is how a spiritual knowledge works, is that the essence of the knowledge that we study is all transcendental, meaning it's beyond the range of the mind and senses. And so Krishna reveals it proportionate to our sincerity Not so much proportionate to how much we study and how much we chant and all of these things, but really it's the sincere service attitude by which actual realizations take place. And one of the means that Krishna does for that revelation, we may not immediately get all of the conclusions of the Vedas, and we can compose beautiful Sanskrit prayers or even beautiful English prayers, but he bestows upon us an attraction for hearing the Vedic literature. There's this wonderful set of lectures I just share with you by Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. He's actually reading little essays that he wrote on, I think he was intending to do the whole Bhagavatam, but he only got through the first 2 chapters. But still, it's so illuminating. And he talks there, because this in the second chapter, this theme is brought out, the need to acquire a taste for hearing. And in fact, even in the second verse of the whole Bhagavatam, it's described, the third line, it begins, srimadbhagavatam mahamanikute kingva parad ishvaro sadyo ridya varujate chukutabi shushushabi stachanat. And he gets into explaining this shushushabi word, which comes up again. It comes in different forms. So that means eagerness to hear, and by extension, he says, eagerness to execute and incorporate the knowledge that you hear into your life. In other words, to transform your life according to the knowledge that you hear. That's part of shushushabi. In other words, eagerness to serve. So it's a matter of revelation. Shunvatam sakata Krishna punyashavana kirtana krudyantakstoya badhani vidunoti suritsatam. That this is essential passage beginning with, I think, 1 to 16 or 17. And is describing that for those who are ardently hearing Krishna Katha, vibrated by the right source, by his devotee, then Krishna within the heart, as the super soul, he cleanses away the abhadras. And it's important to remember that ignorance is one of those inauspicious things, those anarthas. Ignorance. So when the ignorance is cleansed away, when the darkness is cleansed away, as Krishna says in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text number 11, then the light, then illumination comes. So the idea is that this knowledge is already there. It's already within us, deep within us, because we're originally Krishna conscious living entities. As Srila Prabhupada says on the address in the record album. So that eagerness to hear and be enlightened, as well as revelations in the heart, are giving us all this knowledge, which then inform whatever we speak, whatever we write. And in this case, Dhruva is composing these wonderful prayers, even though he was incapable, because he's been blessed by Krishna. He's got this revelation. So, and then Prabhupada makes the point here that I think. Okay, so it's not simply a matter of academic learning; it's a matter of getting the blessings of the Lord. And then he quotes a verse, although he doesn't quote the Sanskrit. Yatsa devi para bhaktir, yatsa devi para bhaktir, yata devi tata para guru. Yasya devi parabhakti yata devi tata guru. Sorry. Tasyaite katitayota prakashante mahapana. So this verse comes again and again, both in the books and in Prabhupada's lectures, that for someone who has unflinching faith, and we've been reading about that in the evening class, this vivasayatmaka buddhi, Prabhupada quoted Vishwanath Chakravarti, the real touchstone or real indication of this vivasayatmaka buddhi, this one-pointed determination which we find with Dhruva Maharaj, is taking the words of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. In other words, really to imbibe that order. And that's exactly what Prabhupada emphasizes again and again. Because he engaged in unflinching devotional service to Narada, exactly as he had recommended. Therefore, he was successful in the matter of 6 months, which is like a snap of the fingers in such a yuga. And he went under a complete transformation from being, dare I say, kind of a petulant, little child, who wanted to get this kingdom greater than his father's or grandfather's or great-grandfather. And that was the motivation that moved him into the forest and how he met Narada. But because he then did everything according to what Narada recommended, the chanting of the holy name, the worship, the other aspects of devotion service had completely purified that desire. And it was transformed, as we'll read, into bhakti mohopavahatam trahivepa sango. Let me just have the association of your great devotees so that I can go on absorbing myself in the wonderful nectar of your Krishna Katha. And in that way, I'll easily be able to cross over this material world because I'll go on the boat of Krishna Katha. So he forgot all about the kingdom. He wasn't, but then Vishnu insisted that he take the kingdom. And it's a little bit confusing because his father is already retired. I mean, his father was totally depressed and discouraged. Did he die before he came back? I forget. But I think Dhruva took over the kingdom even as a 5-year-old child, you can imagine. Anyway, he ruled for 30,000 years, There's more to the story. His brother was killed by the yakshas, and then he went off on the yakshas, started killing all of them, and he was appealed to by Kuvera, and we'll read about that. And then in the end, this famous scene where when he's finally ready to pass away, the same I think a flower airplane was sent down, and then he boards on there and he puts his foot on the head of death and climbs on that vimana. That's a famous scene. So here's the conch shell, touched his forehead, became completely aware of the Vedic conclusion. And then, here's where it is. So Prabhupada is emphasizing, as he does often, that he had proper understanding of the difference between the jiva and the paramatma. Because there's a whole lot of confusion, especially emanating from India, of the non-difference, of that we're ultimately non-different from, or the same as, the absolute truth, the supreme Brahman. That's the Mayavad conclusion. And here, he became fully understanding the difference between, the eternal difference between the jiva and the paramatma. Because if that difference is even slightly misunderstood, then the whole impetus for bhakti kind of evaporates. If there isn't this eternal distinction between the individual soul and the supreme soul, then bhakti becomes kind of a means to an end, which is what the Mayavadis think. Okay, part of the sentimental masses, fine. You need something to meditate on. I told that story when I was hanging out with the Ramakrishna mission, which I survived miraculously. And I wanted to chant Hare Krishna. I asked them if they had a deity or a form of Krishna I could look at. So they sent me upstairs to the attic, and there was this little table, and there was this single form of Krishna playing, a little alabaster form, white. And I was meditating. But after a while, chanting a few rounds, and I looked closely, and there was all this dust. They hadn't been cleaned. There was no devotion. It was just an object of meditation. Can you imagine? So that's exactly why the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, are barred from really getting the mercy of the Lord. This is explained in that famous verse. Ye and ye adabindaksha vimukta mainanastvayastabhavat avishuddha buddhaya. Their intelligence is impure because they're adverse to serving the Lord. And so they think they're liberated in the mind, vimukta manina. And a very few can rise up to the position of Brahman by severe austerities. Because the Brahmabhuta platform means you're beyond the modes of nature. In other words, you're not hankering after all kinds of material pleasures, because that's the mode of passion. So somehow or other, by force of will, if they're very strong, they can rise up to aruha krichena parampadam. Parampadam means the transcendental position, Brahmabhuta. But the very next words are patantyado. But after some time, maybe short or long, they fall down again, because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. There's no activity there. There's no relationship. There's no form. Can you imagine? I mean, for devotees, it's just kaivalyam narakayate. It's hellish to think like that. That the ultimate goal of all this is that no more deities, no more holy name, no more prasadam, no more association. Just the white light. I mean, you're protected from even desiring that by just your first few days of Krishna consciousness. And it's not just philosophy. It's the fact that you're already tasting, so much of the benefits of the relationship with Krishna. If nothing else, just kind of a peacefulness, a tamping down of the material fires of dissatisfaction. Material life means always being dissatisfied. Even if you're in a safe position and you have facility for sense gratification, but at each moment, if you're enjoying sense gratification, you know that will quickly come to an end. You become satiated. You have to stop. So then you have to look for someplace else. Dissatisfaction. So shochati kankshati. This is shochati kankshati. Is you're lamenting what you lost or you can't have. And you're hankering, desiring strongly that which you hope to have. So Brahma Buddha Pasanatma, na shojati, na kankshati. He repeats, na shojati, he doesn't say na shojati, kankshati, na shojati, na kankshati. Neither one. So why Prasanatma? Because you're already joyful. You're already tasting the natural joyfulness of the soul. And that, taking us back to that little section of the second chapter that we're referring to. So progressively what happens is, and the next verse is the one I always chant before the class because it refers to attending Bhagavatam class. Nashta prayeshu badreshu. When most of these are badras, not all, prayeshu means nearly all, destroyed, nashta. Badreshu, by nityam bhagavata sevya. By serving both kinds of Bhagavats, and we're back to the theme here of serving the spiritual master. By Nityam means regularly attending class. It doesn't mean that you sit like there for 10,000 years like at Naimisharanya, but you attend the class regularly, and the rest of the time, and during that time, you're serving the Bhagavat, both Bhagavats. When you're studying Bhagavat, repeating Bhagavatam, and hearing, you're certainly serving the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's Sevaya. But the rest, and that also includes that you're serving both the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavat, the Mahabhagavat, the person Bhagavat, by attending the class, meditating on it, hearing and incorporating that instruction into your life. But sometimes you're not actually hearing Bhagavat directly. You're just putting that instruction into order. Well, then you're still serving the Mahabhagavat. So that's why I said Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. That's how the anarthas are destroyed. That's a symptom also of the anarthas being destroyed. Bhagavat yuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. So by this activity, you move up that scale to come to the point of nishta. It means simply a cleansing process is taking place nicely. And almost all of the abhadras and anarthas are destroyed, and you come to the point of nishta. Now, Dhruva practically started at that point. That means real determination. The definition of that is just the same thing that Loche gives for Shraddha. Shraddha Shabde, Vishwas Kohe, Sudridha Nishtroy. Sudridha, what does that mean? Who can say? Sudridha. Very determined, very fixed. Nishtroy, very fixed confidence and faith. That what? Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. And this is a key line here. That just by the process of doing the following the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, that all of my aspirations will be achieved. My life will be completely successful. Krishna is God, I'm His servant, Bhakti is the way to know Him. This process of Bhakti we've been given in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Yes, that's the ultimate. I have complete faith. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's real Shraddha, to remain that, to keep that faith always. So that, and it all begins with hearing. It all begins with becoming inspired to associate with the devotees and entering into the sadhu sangha. And what do you do in sadhu sangha? You listen. You hear. Satam pasangan mama virya sambado bhavante rikkana rasayana kata. It's all a question of this absorption in the transcendental sound. So, and what do you learn from that? That you're a servant of Krishna. Krishna, what is that? Jivera Sodaboy Krishnera Nityadas. This is like a mission statement. This is, you make a t-shirt out of it. That the eternal Sarup, the actual eternal identity of every jiva, every single jiva, all countless trillions of them, is to be a servant of Krishna. Krishnera Nityadas means the eternal servant of Krishna. But then the rest of the verse is important also. Krishnera tatasta shakti. This is part of the sarup, of the identity we cannot give up. That we're the marginal energy of Krishna. We're not Krishna. We don't become Krishna. We're not even part of the Ladani Shakti. We're a special Shakti. Individuals are called the Tatasta Shakti, marginal energy. We have a portion of that Ladani Shakti. That's our natural state. But now we've forgotten it. We've turned it into sense gratification through ignorance. And then Beta Prakash. Here's your oneness. But it's inextricably tied to the difference. A beta means no difference. But beta. So how can it be different and non-different? The same way that everything is in Krishna and Krishna is in everything. If the apple is in the bag can't be in the apple materially, right? It's just like it's a koan. This is our koan. But here it says Beta Prakash, the words of Lord Chaitanya, the words of Krishna. So we do have a oneness with Krishna. And in Bhakti Yoga, we always emphasize the difference. But we shouldn't forget the oneness. Because one of the implications of that oneness is this, this phrase, I've given you this before, Padma Purusha, Bhajaniya Padma Purusha Sukha Matvam Swasukatvam, which is really right out of the Anyabhilasha Dashunyam, which means that the essence of the attitude of bhakti that we should have is to only take our pleasure in the pleasure of the worshipable Lord. That's really where it's at. Only take our pleasure in the pleasure. But now, think of it ontologically, just philosophically. Because we are one with the Lord, just like the leaves of the tree. If we it's kind of a mixed metaphor, but if we water the root of that tree, then the whole tree becomes happy, Krishna becomes happy, and all parts and parcels become happy. So our greatest happiness, our greatest source of bliss, is not something through the senses, but using those senses, which are now materially covered, but which are eventually purely spiritual, for the service of Rishikesh. Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakta Ruchate. And by that service, forgetting our own happiness, but really thinking of Krishna's happiness, and that you become supremely happy forever. It's a mystery, but that's how it happens. We have a kind of a shadow of it here, an example, in the Christmas spirit. I remember when Christmas came around, I got caught up in it because a lot of my friends were Christians. I was so-called Jewish. But still, I got into the whole thing and singing those songs, And the whole idea was that you become happy, Christmas morning, by giving the gifts. That's where the happiness is. By seeing the pleasure of the children, because Saint Nick came down and the parents arranged, then you're happy. So this idea, and a lot of charities, right, are out there. So this is a reflection of it in the material world. But that's really the source of the ultimate happiness, is to give completely of yourself for the pleasure of Krishna, which also means pleasing his parts and parcels by turning them on to Krishna, by sharing Krishna. And in that way, taking your happiness. And that's what the essence of Bhakti Rasa is. Bhakti Rasa means you read the 4th chapter, Adi Lila. This is a key chapter. I would, if you haven't read it yet, I would study it. Because it describes the internal reasons for Lord Chaitanya's coming. And how he wanted to be, to have, and he was in the mood of Radharani. So then Krishna Skava said, well, to understand this, we have to understand who is Radharani. And to understand Radha, you have to understand the gopis. What is their mood? And so they epitomize. Don't forget that these gopis are coming down. Some of them were the personified Vedas. Some of them were the sages in Dandakaranya. Others would be graduating from this plane. In other words, they're jivas who are now becoming gopis. And some of them are just Krishna's eternal gopis. There's 4 different categories. His eternal gopis, they also came down with him to help in the pastime, just as Mother Yashoda and Nanda. These are expansions of them. So what is the essence of their, the essence of the whole thing is that Atmandriya Pritivancha Dare Kam, Krishnandriya Priti Icha Dare Prem Nam, is that both the Kam and Prema are similar in that, think of them as both metals, but one is gold and one is iron. They share something in that they're both metals, but they are completely different in value and in how you use them and so forth. So the desire to please one's own senses is kama. That's that simple idea. And we know from the Gita that that's our eternal enemy in this material world. As long as we're in this material world, the desire, this passion to serve one's own senses, headed by sex desire. But the desire, and it can be just as strong or more, as we see with Lord Chaitanya, to please Krishna's senses is prema. And there's a unbreakable bond between those two, as Prabhupada explains at the end of the 3rd chapter there in the Bhagavad Gita. That prema, when we're in the spiritual world, and we somehow turn away from Krishna, ishada petasya. It's right there in the Bhagavatam. Ishada petasya. We turn away from Krishna. And then not only does the prema become kama, but also fear comes. Because we're no longer aware, although we can't break the relation, we're no longer aware of our protection from Krishna or relation to Krishna. Now we're relating to Maya, external energy. And her job is like a severe reformer, teacher who a frustrated father, his child is incorrigible. He puts him in what do they call it? This boot camp, and so you'll have to learn discipline. And that's exactly what this material world is. We try to enjoy, and then we're frustrated, and then we die, and then we go through some horrible experience, and the whole world blows up, and we don't die, but it certainly feels like it. And you get frustrated. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. That very prema has been adulterated and turned into kama because we're trying to emanate the Ladini Shakti instead of trying to please Krishna and really being delighted by and blissed out by that experience of pleasing Krishna. And any happiness that we get in Krishna consciousness is because we're doing that. We're chanting our rounds nicely. We're paying attention. We're doing some sincere service, and there's a pleasure there. It may be not as intense or defined as we read about, but that's the beginnings of awakenings of attraction to Krishna. The taste, the ruchi, becomes asakta and becomes thicker and thicker with more concentration and elimination of all the anarthas and the bhava and prema. Prabhupada gave us all this because he wanted us to try to go up that ladder. So Dhruva Maharaj, with his determination and his great association with Narada Muni and his determination to follow everything, he completely purified the material desire. And now we've just read about his ecstatic symptoms. He's kind of licking up the feet of Vishnu and embracing him with his arms, and he's in absolute ecstasy. Tears are coming and everything. So he became purified. He's the perfect example. So now he wants to offer prayers. This is the natural progression of things. You get some revelation or some blessing from the Lord and you want to offer prayers. We see it with Bhishma Dev and with Kunti and with throughout the Bhagavatam, Prahlad and Dhruva. And these prayers are very instructive for us. Because these are we take it for granted, the wonderful literature that we're reading here, the beautiful way in which the verses are put together, the vocabulary, even material scholars, when they see the Bhagavatam as a great literary work, if they appreciate the Sanskrit. But, it's aesthetics. Aesthetics is very important in the worship of Krishna. Just like the whole idea of dressing the deities. They're already beautiful, but he gives you inspiration how to, first of all, getting the dress and making it and all the different details of the shringar, the singhasan. This enhances our appreciation because we see the devotion that's been put into it. That aesthetic thing, or the music, and the cooking, everything is all aesthetics. The architecture. This building, why people walk in there, we kind of get used to it, but just the very forms, it's not, just this way. It's got this upward. It's lifting your mind into the higher realms. There's there's a whole art for the architecture. I remember when I went to Russia one year, one of my 2 trips to Russia. No, I'm sorry. This was a trip to India. But I got a real cheap ticket and I went through Romania. Bucharest, I think it was. And they had just had, it was the early 90s, and when the whole, Soviet Union collapsed, soon they collapsed, and had been ruled by a Stalinist guy, really a nasty, nasty dictator for years and years and years, and they actually executed him, shot him in the head. So this was just a few months after that, so, so things were still like, people were still in that mood. So the first thing that happened, you get off in the airport, and, there was no heat, and we had a long layover, and there were all these guys in these black leather jackets. So who are these guys, So they weren't the secret police, but the secret police had, and the KGB type people, they had worn the black jackets, so this was kind of a fashion thing now. So ordinary guys were wearing these black jackets, but they looked pretty, scary. And then we walked outside. It was such a long layover. Oh, and the architecture. It's like, imagine a radiator, like 20 stories high. All the apartment buildings are like that, the streets were dirty and everything. Oh my God, so depressing, But you read about Dwarka. We were just reading that I was reading it in Krishna book or 10th Canto. Oh, all the parks are there and everything is pristine, and how everything is decorated for Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. This is all part of the higher sentiments and the mode of goodness and pure goodness. And people are inspired by the divine, and they, produce beautiful music in glorification, and everything becomes auspicious. So, we're of course, we're living in Kali Yuga in a modern American city, but these literatures provide us with an insight into the most beautiful vibrations, in honor of Krishna. And this is like an ordinary verse, but it's a real work of art. And we'll see that the prayers that are coming up are also very beautiful. So, here he's being inspired. We can also be inspired to speak about Krishna and be able to convince others, because we're really convinced, we're experiencing, and we're studying, and so we can repeat the Shastra. The ideas are flowing. This is a way we can get inspired to also offer our words to Krishna beautifully. It's the same process, although not as dramatic as being touched by a conch or by the hand of the Lord, but the same thing is going on. The more sincere we are, Krishna says right in the Gita, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. And then the next verse, who knows it? Tesham evanakam partam ahama jnana jam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena basata. It's the same thing going on here. We should know those 4 verses, 10, 8 through 11. We'll learn them. So he says, first, the third verse is a little less intimate, although it's very, moving, is that for those who are always worshiping me with love and connected to me with bhakti, tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam, worship me with, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. But in the next verse he says, out of my compassion for them, and this word anukampa, we know what kampa means, right? It's one of the symptoms. There's ashru. What do we sing every morning? Mahaprabhu kirtanan vitya gita vadita majan manasora sena romanchakam bashu taranga bajo vande guroshi charanaravinda. We should try to know the word for words. It's a better experience. So Roma ancha means hair standing on end, and kampa means trembling. And Roma and kampa means trembling. And ashru taranga means waves of tears. These are some of the symptoms that the Guru is experiencing while chanting Hare Krishna and doing kirtan. So here Krishna says anukampa. Anu means following. So in other words, we're in darkness, and Krishna is feeling for us, and he's trembling in ecstasy or out of sympathy. And therefore, within the heart, he dissipates the darkness of ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge. So it's a similar thing. Now what happens? He becomes enlightened, literally, is he? And Arjun is a perfect example of that. And then he speaks next words: Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Madideva, Majam Vibhum. That's another verse we should all know. He's basically saying, yes, I recognize you're the Supreme Personality of God, and he's giving various aspects of that. So, where are we coming from? Years ago, we didn't know anything about Krishna. If someone tries to tell us Krishna is God, and they say, "Where are you kidding me?" In other words, we've come out of a lot of darkness, and that enlightenment is then furthered by repeating it. That's why the preaching movement is so important. What does it say? Learn it, live it, give it. If you learn the Shastra while practicing it, then you're ready to give it to others. And that giving to others, as Bhaktisiddhanta told Prabhupada when he was getting initiated and coming up, he says, you teach others, this will be good for you as well as them. So that we experience that. So that's how the same process works all the time. Through Krishna's devotees, he enlightens others who are still in darkness, and then they in turn become forces or media through which Krishna can enlighten others. That's how he works. Both even when he's on the planet, he does that. But especially now, he's left himself in so many ways, and his book and his representatives. So the more we take advantage of it, and the more we become one of his representatives, the more all of these books and everything that we read will be so much nectar. The taste will be so much great. We'll never want to stop. Okay, any discussion? Okay, we have the mic, the new mic situation. Pointed directly. Good.
So, Prabhu, before you were talking about...
I think those three have to be up.
Yeah.
Can you get on there?
I think it's transmitting to the thing, but not to
there's three little sliders on the left side of the mixer. So I don't know which is which, but make sure all three is up. Just bring it up gradually as he's speaking.
So earlier, before you were talking about serving the Bhagavat and the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavat, one being the...
There's a verse. Yeah.
One being the person Bhagavat. And it made me think about this verse.
Okay.
Which I'm sure you've...
you put this one up. Put the one on the left. I think it's the one on the left is this one. Hare Krishna. All right, we're good. I'll just speak softly.
Which is the verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita talking about the Mahabhagavat. It's saying the Mahabhagavat is one... I was just wondering if you could help me understand what this means.
The verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
The Mahabhagavat's one who decorates his body with tilak, and whose name indicates him to be a servant of Krishna by the word das. He's initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. So it...
Okay.
Prabhupada,
is that the full definition?
Well, I'll just read the whole. So the Mahabhagavat is one who decorates his body with tilak, and whose name indicates him to be a servant of Krishna by the word das. He is also initiated by a bona fide spiritual master and is expert in worshipping the deity, chanting mantras correctly, performing sacrifices, offering prayers to the Lord, and performing sankirtan. He knows how to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how to respect the Vaishnava. When one has attained the topmost position of Mahabhagavat, he is to be accepted a guru and worshipped exactly like Lord Hari. Only such a person is eligible to occupy the post of a guru.
Okay. And that's in the text of the CC? Oh, that's in the purport.
I was wondering if you could help me understand that. That's the definition of a Mahabhagavat, but we usually think of it as Mahabhagavat something quite different.
Well, no, I mean, if you go through all of that, what purport is that in there?
Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 24, 330.
Oh yeah, the one who was dedicated to preaching or something. Yeah. And one should be careful to take instruction Uttamadikari if you want to progress. Right? So this is 24:4. 24:330. Big chapter. One of the biggest, if not the biggest. Oh, no. All right, let me just look at it, and then we'll have to adjourn. Sorry, it went over. All right, 3:30. Huh? Okay, Mahabhagavat. Okay, this is a long one from the Padma Purana. It's a whole verse. Mahabhagavata Shrestho Brahmano Vaigar. All right, I get the beginning of the purport to 24.330, the Padma Purana characteristics of the Guru, bona fide spiritual master. I mean, the thing is, you can't just focus on one section. This is a long purport. That what you read probably is at the bottom. But I'm looking at Mahabhagavat Shrestha. The Guru must be situated in Tamas platform devotional service. There are three classes of devotees. First class is the spiritual master for all kinds of people, not limited to a particular group. Okay. Anyway, the definition, there's many definitions, and one of them, Prabhupada would always quote, Tasma Guru Jigyashu Shreya Uttaman Shabde Parechanish Brahmanyupashamashriyam. Is that he's fixed in these two aspects of the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead and the Shabda Brahman. And at the same time, the third characteristic, fixed means absorbed in thinking of Krishna, serving Krishna, and according to Shastra, and giving, and the other one is completely averse or free of material desire, upashamashriyam. So this is a short definition. We can discuss the other one. I think the others are just external symptoms. You can see the tilak, but that's just, if they never wear tilak, he's not a Mahabharat. It's necessary but not sufficient, that particular. But all of them together, I think, describe the pure devotee that you can have trust in. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.